For 10 years, her father introduced her to everyone as the Maid. He didn't know she was actually the secret CEO of the company that was about to buy his entire legacy. Thea O'Neill grew up in the shadow of a perfect sister. To her father, Richard, her sister Meredith was the golden child, a doctor whose medical school tuition he paid for by taking out a second mortgage. But for Thea, Richard had a different plan. When she graduated high school, he told her plainly, "Community college is plenty for someone like you." He saw her as ordinary. And when Thea's marriage collapsed years later, leaving her as a single mother to a 2-year-old daughter named Lily, Richard didn't offer open arms. He offered a drafty, 600-square-foot cottage on the edge of his property and a warning, "This is temporary, Thea. Don't turn it into a habit." To survive, Thea started cleaning houses for $15 an hour. She scrubbed toilets while her sister performed surgeries. At family dinners, her mother, Patricia, would laugh off the jokes Richard made about Thea's profession in front of their wealthy friends. "Thea is so good with a mop," he'd say, raising a glass of expensive scotch. "I guess some people are just born to serve." Thea would just look down at her raw, red hands and say nothing. But while she was scrubbing those floors, she was also watching. She noticed that the owners of these massive vacation estates had no one to manage them. No one to handle the repairs, the staffing, or the logistics. She didn't just see dirt. She saw a gap in the market. With a $15,000 investment from her black sheep Aunt Gloria, the only person who actually believed in her, Thea launched Magnolia Estate Services. She worked 18-hour days. She built a website while Lily slept. She traded her cleaning supplies for contracts. Within 3 years, she wasn't just cleaning houses. She was managing 15 of the most luxury properties in the entire Shenandoah Valley. She had 12 employees. She had a revenue of over $2 million. And she kept every single bit of it a secret from the father who still called her the Maid. But the secret was about to explode. Her father was deep in debt and desperate to sell his land to a massive developer to save his reputation. He didn't realize that the developer's most trusted advisor was the very daughter he had spent a decade belittling. And Thanksgiving dinner was about to become his worst nightmare. He sat at the head of the Thanksgiving table, bragging about his $5 million land deal, completely unaware that his maid daughter was the one who held the power to cancel it. Richard was on top of the world. He had just received word that a major firm, Sterling Creek Developments, was officially interested in buying his family's heritage land. He spent the entire Thanksgiving dinner talking over everyone, his eyes glowing with greed. To him, this was his ticket back to the high life and a way to finally pay off the debts he'd hidden from his family. As usual, Richard treated Thea like she was invisible, or worse, like she was staff. "Thea, don't just stand there," he barked, gesturing to his empty crystal glass. "My wine won't pour itself. And go check the kitchen. You wouldn't want to ruin your sister's favorite dessert, would you? Meredith has had a long week at the hospital. She doesn't need to be dealing with a burnt pie." Thea stood up slowly, but she didn't reach for the wine. She walked to the window and checked her watch. "Actually, Dad," she said quietly, "I think the dessert can wait. We have a guest." Just as Meredith began a long-winded story about her latest surgery, a sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel driveway. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped out, looking every bit the high-powered executive. It was Marcus Sterling, the CEO Richard had been desperate to meet for 6 months. Richard scrambled to the door, smoothing his shirt and putting on his most charming smile. "Mr. Sterling, what an unexpected honor. Please, come in. My daughter, the doctor, is here, and my wife has prepared an incredible meal." Marcus didn't even look at Richard. He walked straight past him, his eyes landing on Thea, who was still wearing her simple kitchen apron. "Thea." Marcus grinned, reaching out to shake her hand with genuine respect. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. My board just approved the management contract for the new resort. We want Magnolia Luxe to handle the entire 500-acre project." The room went cold. You could have heard a pin drop on the hardwood floor. Richard's face turned a sickly shade of grey. He looked from Marcus to Thea, then back again. "Wait. Marcus. Surely there's a mistake. You know, the Maid." Marcus turned to Richard, his expression hardening instantly. The maid. Richard. This is Thea O'Neill. She owns the most successful estate management firm in 3 states. My company doesn't sign a single contract in this valley without her approval first. Thea finally looked her father in the eye. For the first time in 10 years, she didn't see a man she was afraid of. She saw a man who had just realized his maid daughter was now his boss. But the shock of the business deal was only the beginning. Thea was about to show them exactly what she had done with her millions, and why her father was about to lose the house he was sitting in. He thought he was selling his land to a faceless corporation to save his reputation. He didn't realize he was actually handing the keys to the daughter he'd spent 10 years calling a servant. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Richard's glass of wine sat forgotten as he stared at the legal documents Marcus had placed on the table. Meredith, usually so sharp-tongued, looked like she'd been struck dumb. "Thea," Richard finally stammered, his voice cracking. "Why didn't you say anything? All those years, the cleaning, the cottage." Thea untied her apron and set it neatly over the back of her chair. For the first time, she stood taller than her father. "Because you only valued people who had titles, Dad. You didn't want a daughter, you wanted a status symbol. I decided to build my own status while you were busy looking down on mine." The ultimatum, 1 to 210. Thea pulled a second folder from her bag. This wasn't a development contract. It was a deed of sale. "Richard," she said, using his name for the first time. "The bank was going to foreclose on this estate last month. Your investments failed, and you were weeks away from losing everything. I didn't just approve the development deal, I bought your debt. I'm the owner of this house now." Richard slumped into his chair. The man who had spent a lifetime belittling others was suddenly small. Thea's mother, Patricia, reached for her husband's hand, finally seeing the reality of the mess they were in. "I'm not going to leave you on the street," Thea continued, her voice calm but firm. "But I need this house. Magnolia Lux is expanding, and this will be our new headquarters. As for you, the cottage on the edge of the property is still standing. It's 600 square feet, but it's clean. You're welcome to live there, rent-free, for as long as you need." The irony was perfect. The very place Richard had used to punish Thea was now his only refuge. Thea walked out the front door, leaving the golden child and the master of the house to figure out their new reality. As she drove away in her own SUV, she looked at her daughter, Lily, in the rearview mirror and smiled. Lily would never grow up believing she was just anything. Thea O'Neill didn't just build a business. She built a new life on the very ground they told her she wasn't good enough to walk on. The lesson: never judge a person by the dirt on their hands. They might just be using it to build the empire you'll one day have to live in. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who feels like the black sheep today. The comments are open. Have you ever proved everyone wrong?